We had a fantastic start in the morning, the inaugural and the first plenary, and then there had been 3 parallel sessions. So I think the fundamentals of the South Asian Economic Summits have been articulated enough. And we have also gone through a retrospect. And also we have identified some of the experiences which we have accumulated, extricated from our journey experience, although they may have been different for different countries. But there is obviously a general South Asian narrative taking shape. The South Asian narrative, as has been mentioned in the morning and has been developed by many others, including Professor Remansovan, is that the region is progressing, but the interrelationship may not have fully exploited its potential. But at the same time, many new things are happening. My colleagues will distribute the concept note, which is here, so that I don't have to speak about it too long, and where you will see what we have mentioned. The first and foremost question, looking forward, is that whether the traditional regional cooperation arrangement which we have, and SAARC in particular, which has been discussed, also referred to in the morning, is whether at an impasse, whether we need to think more creatively, more innovatively, in terms of the framework, institutional framework within which we are going to operate in the future. Already there are signs of that, sub-regional cooperation and also sectoral plurilateral agreements, these things are coming in place. There are issues also learning from the past that the COVID has given us some experiences, that how do we need to, in the case of health emergencies, we need to collaborate. India played a big role in terms of supplying vaccines, but there had been other cooperation in terms of, for Bangladesh, doing PPE and giving it to various countries. And there had been also innovative currency cooperation with Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, as we know very much. Now, the issue is even during this period, we have seen potential areas have unfolding. We have moved from the manufacturing to the service sector. We have brought in connectivity. We have talking about financial cooperation. We are talking about digital cooperation in many ways. And what we see that the extra-regional forces have become interested also in our matters in many ways. And when you talk about extra-regional forces, we mean not only our next door but closest neighbor, which is China, but also countries like as far as Japan. But at the same time, we see that how the latest G20 meeting has also laid forward how the Asia, Europe, Middle East, via Middle East, the economic corridor issues are being discussed as well. So at the same time, we are seeing that the movement in terms of moving from the government to the private sector initiatives, the thought process of the civil society coming into play, and the issue what we have now, how do you really create a more viable or more updated or formal framework in order to take these things forward. So if the first plenary is more about retrospect, we are talking about more about the prospect. So from retrospect to prospect. And with this in between with your introspect. So that is what we have today over here. Now, as you can see with me on 2 sides, we have a very, very distinguished panel over here. You cannot think of a better panel to deal with these issues. People coming with not only their competence, but also with the commitment and a huge expertise and experience in all this matter. Colleagues, do you have these bios with you? Because those people who don't know them, no bio will be enough. And if you know them, I won't spend my time reading the bios. So I will introduce them as we go forward. But let me start with one of the person who has witnessed history much more than many others from close quarter. We have with us, and you have already met him in the plenary session, Dr. Ishrat Hussain, the former SGO of Chittagong, or what, Patuakhali? the former SDO of Patuakhali. Let me introduce him like that. And he had been many things, many incarnations, from policy making to being advisor to the Prime Minister, to the Central Bank Governor, and also director, Chief Economist Director in the World Bank, many others. He in fact, is an epitome of experience and expertise in many ways. And we're so happy to have him here today. So, and also now a very distinguished author. So, Ishrat, my very simple question to you: have we come to an impasse with the current institutional structure of regional cooperation? Is it all gone? Should we think totally from zero, or how do we build on it what we have?
Well, that is a pertinent question. And I am eternally an optimist. And I would like to inform you and this audience that despite the traditional rivalry between India and Pakistan, we were close in 2014 to an agreement which was being signed by the Indian government and Pakistan government, conferring the most favored nation status to India. Because India had given it to Pakistan a long time ago, but it was not being implemented. It was almost to be signed by the two cabinets. And then there was elections in India, and this was considered as something which will not belong to the outgoing government. And since then, we have not really reached that. But the beauty about that agreement was that it was also linked to SAFTA. So it was saying that, look, if we do these bilateral agreements, the negative list for Indian products will be phased out in almost 1 year rather than 3 years. And the negative list was also reduced to support the Bangladeshi, Pakistani, Sri Lankan, Nepalese exports. I'm so sorry that this breakthrough didn't take place. Otherwise, sitting in 2023, we would be facing a very, in my view, a very robust relationship between the regional countries. Because there are natural markets. The Punjab market in Pakistan has got its natural flows both ways to the Punjab, Chandigarh, Haryana, and Delhi. The Rajasthan market has got flows to Sindh. Similarly, Sylhet and Assam, they have flows together. Similarly, Nepal and Uttarakhand and Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, they have flows. And this sub-regional, pressure groups which will benefit from this trade will become very active in order to bring political pressure. But that didn't happen. It is history, but I'm not giving up, and I hope that in some time in the future, this will be revived because all the work has been done, and this will be, a SAFTA will be given a new life. Having said that, you asked me to give my own experience because I was involved in preparing the technical work for the government of Pakistan, and I was very much involved in negotiations with the government of India. Now, another experiment which is something which a lot of people do not know is that despite the tension between India and Pakistan, there is a group of South Asia economic students which visit different parts of the region. Once the summit of this group is held in Delhi, sometimes it is held in Lahore, sometimes it is in Dhaka, sometimes in Colombo, sometimes in Kathmandu. And these people who come from the best institutions of India, Pakistan, and the other countries have really become ambassadors for the South Asian cooperation. And these are the younger people who will one day become the leaders in their own professions. So my submission is that despite this political tension, we should promote the kind of exchange between the students and the faculty members and the academics and the think tanks which are influencing the policy making both in the countries as well as within the region. And I think this is something which should be very much advanced. The third area is that the Indian singers and the artists used to be invited to all the big weddings in Pakistan. And Pakistani singers and artists used to go for participating in Indian movies and Indian cultural concerts and other things. And this was bringing in, the cultural harmony, and the Indian movies were very popular and the Indian songs were very popular, not only in Pakistan but all over. So let's start with the small steps, which is exchange of the students, exchange of the artists, of the cultural troupes, and that will build up. And sometimes I think the media personalities and the journalists should also be brought in to visit each other country, and that ultimately will ease the tension, because there will be a constituency for peace in the South Asia and the cooperation. So that is what I wanted to
Dr. Hussain, I would like to have a conversation, and I come from CPD, I believe in dialogue. So let me interrupt and ask you a question. The next host of the next SAARC summit is to be Pakistan, according to the rule. What prospect do you see?
Well, it depends on the elections in India, and I think some people are speculating, my Indian friends, that once Mr. Modi gets re-elected, he will change his stance and he might attend the summit.
You
so
think
I don't know. This is something which I don't know, but I'm just quoting you some of my Indian friends who believe that things may change. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed. I cannot make a definitive statement on that. Shekhar may be able to do that.
Yeah. I think that's a good pass on from football, as you know. that is usually done by a good politician. It seems that Dr. Hussain has just done that. Thank you very much. Colleagues, give a big hand to Dr. Hussain for this very plain talking, because he spoke about the missed opportunity of 2014. May I call it a missed opportunity? It's a missed opportunity of 2014. And then he talked about the young people taking the mantle of cooperation forward, and he also mentioned the use of soft power. The soft power, not only culture, but also at the same time plus media. Thank you very much for that. Would you stick around a bit more? But you have to go. But then thank you very much for your contribution. Do appreciate your candid talking. Thank you. So, Shekhar. Dr. Shekhar Shah is a man of many colors. His first and foremost, I think, competence is that he had been a good friend to CPD and many others to Bangladesh. And he is the one who wrote, my first engagement with him is that when, as a World Bank economist, he wrote Bangladesh Road to Action. What was the name? Agenda for Action. But since then, citizens of Bangladesh has tried to write their own agenda. But Shekhar, after that, had been with the Ford Foundation. He had been with the very others, and he led one of the, Applied Research Institute of NCAER, and many other things on that. So he is an expert not only on India, but also on Bangladesh, but also in the region. Shekhar, time and again, the role of India has come forward in terms of promoting South Asian cooperation. The pivotal role of India, even from today in the inaugural session and thereafter, people have asked what India is doing. And Dr. Ishrat Hussain has just mentioned, passed it on to you, that post-election, India may be more forthcoming. Do you see that optimism?
Thank you, Devapriya Bhai. And since it's my first time in front of the audience, let me thank Dr. Famida, CPD, and all the three executive directors of CPD who have made it the institution it is. I first came in contact with Dr. Subhan in 1993 when I wrote the World Bank's first, what used to be called the Country Economic Memorandum, called From Stabilization to Growth. and I convinced the powers that be in Washington that this document should no longer remain a secret, but should be publicly discussed. And Dr. Soban and his colleagues readily agreed. I believe it was their third public event in Bangladesh, and it was a full-day event where miraculously they were able to get Mr. Saifur Rahman, the leader of the opposition, MPs on both sides, industrialists who supported one or the other, and this was an amazing opening for me as a young professional economist on how debate and discussion can lead to solutions that are more widely accepted. So thank you, Dr. Soban, for kicking my journey as a professional economist. To answer your question about Pakistan and India, and I think that's really the core of the issue that we deal with, as Ishrat also has mentioned. I want to take people back to the immediate post-partition period of 1947 and the violence and the carnage that took place. But in the years from 47 to 50, maybe even a bit beyond that, there was amazing cooperation between the two countries on river waters, which is where the Indus River Water Treaty comes from, on evacuee properties, on refugees. And this is a sign of the leadership and what it can do if there is purpose and if there is intent. I also want to take back people to 2014 when the Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, at his swearing in, invited and had the Prime Ministers of Pakistan, of Bhutan, of Nepal, of Sri Lanka, and the presidencies of Afghanistan and presidency of Afghanistan and Sri Lanka, and the Speaker of Bangladesh. I think no other country has done this in the past, where it has invited the heads of state of these countries to be at the very inception of a new government. So I see many, many opportunities to do this. What I would say is, if India's successful presidency of the G20, about which, at least in India, we heard so much, and those who lived in Delhi experienced it, why can't these countries do a G8 or call it an SA8, where the leadership meets periodically in a rotational way that allows them to give the top level guidance to their governments to be able to resolve problems, and where there is a joint commitment not to break apart. I want to add to that a question that you actually posed to Ishrat, if I may, and say that we need to ask ourselves a question of whether regional cooperation in South Asia has moved from its early aspirational approach of bringing everybody together and with many ambitious goals like SAFTA and a whole range of regional arrangements that required everybody to be in agreement with everybody else, to a much more hard-nosed and realpolitik approach that we now are seeing. And if that has happened, if there is agreement, including in this group, that we have moved from that aspirational, ambitious, somewhat conceptual notion of what regional cooperation should be to a more specific, realpolitik, project-based, need not be entirely regional, could be sub-regional, bilateral, maybe trilateral, of the kind that we are seeing in energy and transport, where there are real benefits that are generated quickly for people on both sides or three sides of the border, which then builds political support within the country for politicians to be able to take these projects to their voters and say, this is progress that we are making with the help of our neighbors, and that then keeps them in power and creates the political environment which then leads to greater regional cooperation. If this is something that we can accept, then the real question is, has SAARC as an organization outlived its purpose? Because
Shekhar, may I interrupt you with a question on this?
Please.
So, colleagues, you'll have to bear with me. I'll be interrupting each of them. Otherwise, they will all fall asleep. So, the point is, you mentioned that real politics and project-based approach and creating a constituency. But the challenge with India cooperating is that it's a federal government. And you have states which are bordering with the countries of the region. There are states which are not bordering with the countries of the region. And they have different types of urgency or priorities in many ways. How do we deal with that? We quite often get confused that who are we dealing with? Are we dealing with the state government? Are we dealing with Delhi? That confusion really creates a bit of a moral hazard in creating that constituency. Please.
Devapriya, you're not the only ones who are confused. The residents of those states sometimes are also confused whether it's the central government, the federal government, or the state government that they should be complying with. But I think this is endemic to a federal entity. This is endemic to a very chaotic democracy which still has elections, which has parliaments and legislatures, and there is no way of getting around this. But I believe, as has happened in instances where there is now a ferry service between India and Sri Lanka that clearly operates out of a state. There are instances where energy transactions have happened and sharing of energy and transit has happened that involves states in the Northeast and West Bengal and Bangladesh. So I do believe that it is possible through conversations, through the meetings of heads of state, very often in a regular, established, rotational fashion, that these problems can be resolved. But I just wanted to go back to the question of whether SAARC has outlived its purpose. It was wonderful to set the stage, to create the momentum, to get commitments at a conceptual level. But as we've seen, some of its very inherent structure prevents movement. And therefore, is it time to let it fade away and allow projects and initiatives that generate real benefits for citizens on all sides of the border to actually begin to take their true shape, in which, of course, the private sector is also going to be very heavily involved, and with the largest private sector that India has, and with its aspirations to be global suppliers of both goods and services, clearly there is a lot of potential in all the countries and all its neighbors for Indian businesses to be investing. So I would urge a very practical approach, and besides connectivity and infrastructure, which are the obvious ways in which investments can take place, there are two other areas that I'd just quickly emphasize. One is higher education. I think there's a tremendous scope for learning from all sides of the borders in our region, to get standard certification, to get accreditation, to be able to handle the excess demand for higher education in many countries, which a country like India or other countries can provide. Both Europe and East Asia have done this. The Bologna conclave, or whatever it's called, makes it very easy for European countries, for example, to be able to respect each other's accreditation. The other topic that I'd mention is public health, because we should not lose the opportunity of the lessons learned during the pandemic of cross-border cooperation in public health issues. And I think this is an extremely viable area for cooperation in the region, again, person to person.
Thank you, Shekhar. Thank you for taking the discussion forward. I do take note of your historical perspective on the connectivity and many other issues. But I take two particular points, I think so, and those colleagues who are making notes about the outcome document of the SAES 14 should take a note of. First one, of course, I made a proposal that we create a expert group on to look at the future, to chart the future, and to take note of, review the past. This was one. But Shekhar has made a much more possibly important proposal that if G20 can work, but India, China, and Russia can come together in terms of that was linguistic diplomacy in many ways, and could really have an agreed document, finally, which they did not have in Indonesia, incidentally, then why can't we really have them together for SAG8, South Asia G8? SAG is not exactly the good word for everybody, so that's take it. So another G8, not that G8, And also for that matter, he suggested business aid and others in that way, to leave SAARC as it is and create a South Asia forum of the heads of the governments and meet somewhere suitably and then move forward on that. That is one. And the second proposal he makes is that forget about everybody. In our WTO parlance, this is known as variable geometry. Whatever works for whichever alliances, that is variable geometry. It may have 4 sides, it may have 3 sides, it may have 5 sides, depending upon the real politics and the project. So that is the 2 other operational proposal came from Shekhar. Colleagues, you are not applauding for such good ideas. Thank you, thank you. I will go to Ambassador Bhattarai now, a person who has, has traversed many important position in his career. As you will see in the bio which we have circulated, he had been the Foreign Secretary. He had been also the ambassadors in many high places, including in the UN. He had been also running various kinds of multilateral and regional cooperation outfits, including Colombo Plan. And since then, he has been also involved in various kinds of other activities in Nepal, and also currently in the think tank network and many other things. Please read the bio. Your time will be good spent over there. So, Ambassador Bhattarai, given your experience in this kind of negotiations, and given that SAARC Secretariat is in Kathmandu in many ways, and you have seen the multilateral and the regional both negotiation as it goes. And now Nepal is part of the sub-regional cooperation, BBIN, BIN, all these things. The proposal which Shekhar made, that variable geometry, what does the experience say? Because any Bangladeshis will say that we thought of exporting things to Nepal, but we couldn't go through India. Even that small piece of land really didn't give us much unhindered access. We wanted to import power from Bhutan, but again, in between was India. It has to be trilateral. We couldn't rule many of the things. So in Bangladesh, we have a bit of a confusion and mixed feeling about these things, how this variable geometry works. We want it from you. Ambassador Bhattarai.
Thank you.
It is almost working like a trilateral cooperation.
It finally worked, so we can be hopeful. Thank you, Chair. Since this is my first public plenary appearance, allow me to congratulate CPD for 30 years of its important contribution to the cause of South Asia, and also its co-organizers for working so hard for so many years. And I also thank them for having me here. And I find from plenary to parallel sessions that so many views and expressions resonate with my own. And I'm sure if these views and expressions reach the people at large in our regions, they will find them resonating their own views and expressions. So I share the eternal optimism about the SAARC process and its turnaround. There are so many things that I want to say, but coming to your question directly, I think what we are talking about SAARC process is essentially a track 1 process, the government process. Now we are going beyond that. For example, this summit is a kind of track 1.5 process. And there could be other processes, track 2, track 3, track 4 processes. And the proposal about having G8 and other G8 for South Asia and the sub-regional arrangements directly should inform the track 1 process, because finally that is where things get through. But these can work, these work,
Excellency,
work.
Where is the track 1?
The track 1 is having a little nap now. I should say. But it's not entirely dead. It's breathing, and it's taking occasional, eye movements that are very close to awakening. And should anything, I'm very optimistic that should things go right at the political level, it takes no time for the process to take a turn, around U-turn, I should say. Very helpful.
So what would be the trigger to turn it around?
It would be the process. Now, I want to address this with some experience about the regional groups. Now, number one is that, is the process, is it in a complete impasse? Or have we exhausted all instruments, the implementation of all instruments that we have in place? We have not. We have not exhausted the implementation of all those processes. We are already looking for new instruments and arrangements if they are feasible, if they are required. There may be a requirement, but before that, we must work hard to exhaust the implementation, sincere implementation of the instruments we have in place. Now, we have not been looking at the experience of others. Now, where does that come from? We can draw from the experience of the neighboring regional group, ASEAN. For example, if we look at the reference points from ASEAN's experience to measure relative success, it becomes clear that there are certain indicators, there are certain aspects which tell us about relative success. For example, one is mutual respect among members. The other one is trust and confidence in cooperative approach. The other one is clarity of purpose inside each and among all aspects of our work. The other one is common international outlook of each and every member of the region. The other one is professional than ceremonial deliberations, the culture of evidence of process. Another is consensus functioning, which we have adopted in track 1. The other one is growing personal contacts among politicians, bureaucrats, academicians, people, professionals, and people at large. So if we inform, we were talking earlier about soft power. If we take these things to the level of people, to make them aware about the importance of how cooperation among our countries work, and if we inform them, the pressure on track 1 players would come from the level of the people.
So when you say we, who are these we?
These are civil society or organizations,
Private
these
sector?
Initiatives, private sector, and processes, events like SAES, but these must manifest the pressure on the governments, on respective governments. So these directly come from there, and it should be possible. Now, another aspect is there to add. Coming from my experience working in New York, there was a time when we used to host a SAARC ministerial meeting. Not only that, but also SAARC ASEAN ministerial meeting. But over time, because we focused on ceremonial approach, ASEAN ministers very candidly started saying that perhaps we are not ready yet to waste any more time in New York. So that tells a lot to ourselves about our approach to these processes. If we inform and create positive constituency internationally, at the seat of the United Nations, for example, or in major capitals, to further our common South Asian causes, it is very much possible to create pressure from within each country and outside for the governments to come together.
Thank you, Excellency. Thank you very much. Colleagues, I'm not going to prompt every time. It should come naturally and spontaneously whenever a good thought has been said. And Ambassador Bhattarai has given us, I picked 2 particular points. You have said many others. First of all, he is an optimist. I don't know where does the optimism comes from. And the optimism for Ambassador Bhattarai came from the fact that he doesn't think that all the internal instrument or the potentials or the modalities of SAARC has been exhausted so as to write it off. I think it resonates with ma'am what you said from the SAARC Secretariat today, that it is time to call an extraordinary meeting of the Ministers' Council. Isn't that what is the name of the
Council of
the extraordinary meeting or emergency of the Council of Ministers to seek political guidance? Colleagues, for those who are writing the conclusion of the SAES 14 should take this one also uptake, because this is exactly what Ambassador Bhattarai has been alluding to, and that is exhausting all the internal instruments available within the system along with that. And this other thing he mentions is that that is a trade-off. What we are doing is that as we do not have a consensus on the regional issues or the ability to meet together vis-a-vis the rest of the world, I think that he thinks that the regional interest is not being well served because of that absence in that way. And if countries who are seeking membership places in the Security Council in the reformed UN should be alerted about that there is a need for the consensus in the region if you are seeking a seat in the global governance structure is in that way. I think that's also a very important message which is we're there. Colleagues, as you can see, I have cut short the deliberations of my eminent panelist, and I have held back to one, and I will now bring him in because he is no less a person than the governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, a man who has presided over the historical and what you call an unbelievable recovery of a country, which we have seen in the recent past going down and coming up like anything in that way. Mr. Governor, I must tell you, when Bangladesh lent out that $500,000 to Sri Lanka, I think there was the odds were that we will never get that money back. And you gave us within a year in that way, and on time and with all the interest along with that. Colleagues, give a big hand to the Sri Lanka for doing such an extraordinary feat, what he has done in that way. I think the governor needs no introduction. His work speaks for itself. And I held back only one issue for him because he declined to speak to the media. He's declined. We all understand his current situation. But the issue is that for South Asia, and we talked about soft power, and one learning from experience is another. Experience we learn from each other countries in that way. I think we are very keen to know, how did you make it happen? How did you really kept the exchange rate down, at the same time interest rate out there, and how to keep on the revenue collection and also the remittance flow which is coming, and the extraordinary feat. What can we learn from you? Because many of those symptoms are very much in Bangladesh at this moment. Please, sir.
First of all, thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya, for not asking question on India and Pakistan from me. So that I appreciate. So I'm not an expert. On this topic, I think you have to tell me the question. I can bet like T20 one day test. So you have to tell me what's the time, given the audience understanding.
I think it will be nice to you take your time, 7-8 minutes, or to make an initial, and then then I want to open up the floor.
Yeah, thank you.
Because that's how I am rushing at this moment.
No, that's enough time. I think I can do that. So basically, I think, first of all, just to give you a background, Sri Lanka has been a country for long period of twin deficit. That's the bottom line of the root cause of the thing. If you look at any country, the lesson first you learn, if a country is running long period of high fiscal deficits and causing current account deficit, it's a test case. Any empirical evidence, if you want to prove Sri Lanka is a country in the region. I don't think any other country has long years of current account deficit caused by fiscal deficits, and as a result, we ended up in 2022 is a balance of payment crisis versus, and also same time sovereign debt crisis. How that happened? In fact, country can run a long period of deficits as long as country has a market access for commercial borrowings. That's how we have been surviving and sustaining those about 3 decades of twin deficits. Because Sri Lanka, as a relatively high income country, doing relatively well. The markets are so sympathetic, and we had commercial access. So when country graduated from a middle-income country level, so we had market access. At some point, early 2000s, our total debt concessional was about over 95%, commercial is about 2-3%. But when it comes to 2021 or 2020, commercial share has gone up to over almost 55%, and concessional part has came down. But the problem is that I don't blame the borrowings of the government. But the thing is that if you have access to markets, and if you borrow and not invest properly, because problem with commercial borrowing is that you get money, sovereigns, governments get money, there's no kind of accountability. Concessional or project finance means you see a project somewhere there. Whether productive or not is a different question, but you see a road or whatever building there. But you get the commercial access. Governments running high fiscal deficits as an incentive to access that and spend that money in salaries, wages, pension subsidies. For a long period, that will not generate anything. As long as market access, then obviously you can run that kind of what we call Ponzi model. And what happened, what triggered the crisis, this was building up, and in fact, I can tell you other part. We're having these boom bust cycles. Sri Lanka is one of the countries, I think other than Pakistan, 16 times. We had this balance of payment issues, and we have been going to the IMF and seeking bailout 16 times so far. This is the 17th time. It happened to be, I'm the 17th governor who deal with the 17th time the IMF program. So basically, all the time it was balance of payment crisis, but this time, what happened in 2019 with the new government came in, all of a sudden there's certain, with the COVID unfortunately that also came in, but COVID, all the countries had the COVID, but we had kind of policies that basically lost our access to capital markets. From early to 2020, IMF declared our debt is not sustainable. We didn't have market access. And even RFI, during COVID period, the rapid financing instrument Sri Lanka was not eligible because our debt was not sustainable. But then what was the solution? And the then ideology of then government basically is to have what they call homegrown solution, and both continues with huge fiscal expansion, finances from domestic markets, no external capital, very high fiscal deficits, ballooning debt to GDP, and also the ideology of the central banking, huge fiscal dominance in monetary policy, where my predecessors, two of them, before I came in, believed what they call modern monetary theory, which is you can print any amount of money, it will not end up in inflation. So that is misunderstanding of even the modern monetary theory. That's a different story there. So this is kind of a policies that was happening in 2020 and 2021, and obviously 2022 when it was happening, so we lost our foreign exchange resource. Came to a level when I was asked to come and took over, the liquid resource, usable resource available to the central bank was only $25 million compared to next 12 months, debt service obligation for the sovereign is $6 billion for next 4-5 years. So imagine a situation where you have only 25 million resource in your hand, usable, and you have to pay $6 billion per every 12 months, next 4-5 years. So, I mean, then obviously with the huge monetary expansion, obviously it was very clear inflation was going out of control, fear of hyperinflation, and with all the difficulties in foreign exchange, there are huge shortages of gas, petroleum. People are, on the streets protesting naturally, and with these difficulties we never had in the past. This is the most difficult period that we had that time. And with that social unrest turned into a political instability, cabinets were resigning, the president had to go and the new president came in, and obviously the governor central bank resigned, the whole cabinet resigned, then we came in. So I was asked, I know, then we had a different program. From then, first thing what we basically did, I was able to convince the then government to announce the debt suspension and stop making debt service payments because although our commitment is already there, our willingness is there, but our ability was not there. That was first step to restructure external debt obligations, announcing this temporary debt suspension. Second, first day in office, interest rates, policy rate was 7%. Immediately, I raised by another 700 basis points. Double the policy interest rate by 700 basis into 14%, and then let the market to play the role of interest rates. And already currency had, without any control, without resource, had been floated without any safeguards. With that huge monetary expansion and fixing the currency for previous 2 years at 200 rupees per dollar, suppressing and maintaining the fixed regime by using our reserves to the bottom. And all of a sudden, even before I came in without any choice, Central Bank had to float this. So 200 became all of a sudden going up 300, 350, 370. So this is the situation. Almost 80% depreciation. Inflation was going to go out of the roof. No reserves. And fiscal government was finding it difficult to finance this thing. But still we had to take those tough measures. There's no other way to bring the stability. So those are very painful reforms. Interest rates, government securities, short-term treasury bills, with the tight monetary conditions, went up to, at some point, 3 months treasury bills were going at 34% at the peak. Exchange rate went to 370, $80 compared to 200 rupees. And even the black market, what they call parallel market, was even premium was another 10, 20% sometimes. Because when you have this kind of scarcity and shortages, obviously remittances, those monthly bills we are getting $500, $600 million came down to 250. The balance was still coming outside the market, and that money was being used to import all the essentials, non-essentials, like all the luxury goods are in the market through those money, but people are in the queues, not having petroleum, all these things. That was the situation. So immediately announced a debt suspension and started negotiating program with the IMF to restore the sustainability and tighten monetary policy. Government was also very supportive once political stability was brought in from July onwards. Government took very decisive fiscal policy, tightening fiscal policy, all are painful. And the petroleum and energy prices were all fixed for a long period. State-owned enterprises are bleeding and making huge losses, exposed to the banking sector. Banks are vulnerable. State-owned banks are exposed to sovereign state-owned enterprises with huge debt. And so cost recovery pricing means energy prices will increase, some electricity under 50%. The petroleum adjusted, I think 200%, like 150 to 100 rupees a litre went up to 150. So about 3 times, but with all the difficult conditions, but still those measures were taken and implemented and took the pain at the beginning. And then as a result, within, I think no one thought, within this short period we would be able to stabilize the economy. So now the current situation, inflation was contained at peak of the 70% in September last year and brought it down to 1% in 12 months period. I think that is the sharpest disinflation.
Would you kindly repeat that? Your inflation
70% inflation in September 2022. Year-on-year inflation came down to 1% in September 2023. So the level of foreign reserves, liquid reserves were only at that point 25 million. We have, but still not sufficient, but 2 billion reserves in our reserves, so that
2 billion.
2 billion
from
April, 25 million to 2 billion.
25 million to 2 billion.
2 billion. So, and obviously still fiscal positions are very tight. Government had to raise all the taxes, historically highest level of value-added tax, income taxes. There are a lot of other administrative measures, cost recovery pricing. So those are very, very painful reforms. I must basically appreciate the Sri Lankan people's kind of a patience through this very difficult time. And still, we have some stability now. So going forward, I think we are in the process of completing the structure in next immediate months and complete the IMF program in next 3-4 years, restore the sustainability, and then from next year, we will, other part I forgot, the economy contracted with all these things, 8% last year. Historically, recession, lowest economic growth, -8%. And this year still maybe 2-3%, but there's a gradual recovery from next year. We are now well set to recover at least gradually from positive growth from second half of this year, and then probably with all the reforms. I think it's not an easy situation, but there's a long way to go. I think if we move in the same direction with all the overall macro policies, and then structural reforms and growth enhancing policies, plus additional part, new commitment is addressing corruption and vulnerabilities in the systems, all across all the sectors. There's an additional commitment by the government on the IMF program. So those are the future reforms.
I very much want to open up the floor because there are my colleagues who would like to ask questions to the whole panel over there, and I do not want to monopolize my position because I'm sitting on the right side of you at this moment. But the issue, the colleagues, you must have noted almost a blueprint for a reform agenda, the debt suspension. I hope and pray. The difference between Sri Lanka and Bangladesh is, in many cases, is that most of your debt was on the commercial market, private debt. In Bangladesh, fortunately, that is not the case. Then the policy rate increased, the fixed currency management to the high depreciation which happened, monetary control, then the interest rate, as I've mentioned, the prices of the petroleum and other goods over there. But what the governor has...
I think this currency rate appreciated. Now this year is 12% appreciation compared to the peak.
So can you imagine that the currency-led appreciation in that way happening now? The Sri Lankan rupees have appreciated since the last 1 year in many ways. But the structural reforms, what the issue has been mentioned by now, and taking the macroeconomic policy together for quite some time to come. I think that's you have given us back our confidence in our textbooks in certain ways. It seems to me. So colleagues, as you can see, we have heard colleagues, Dr. Ishrat Hussain is not here. I would have challenged his optimism much more at that time. But we have heard my colleague, friend Shekhar Shah about his innovative way of looking at this. He doesn't have any love lost for SAARC, if I understand him correctly. Real politics, he is a pragmatic man. But Ambassador Bhattarai still believes in SAARC. He still thinks there are opportunities to be exploited. And of course, we have real issues in countries where we need to learn from each other over there. I am holding back Mr. Jashimuddin, the president of the SAARC Chamber of Commerce, our former president of Federation of Chamber of Commerce of Bangladesh. He, as I would say, this house knows him very well. He's a man of many colors. Apart from that, he leads a major conglomerate in Bangladesh, the Bengal Group. His empire ranges from media to garment sector and many others over there. So I'm holding him back to talk about the private sector perspective afterwards. But before that, I'm opening up the floor. Please raise your hands. Anybody who wants to intervene, comment, ask questions, whatever you feel like. The next 10 minutes will be on that. Please. Huh? No, it's always difficult in the late afternoon to break the ice. General, please introduce yourself before speaking. I may know many of you, but my panelists would like to know as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Amsa Amin, former Army General and Ambassador.
No, this is called the general turned into a politician.
Sorry?
General turned into a politician.
Right, yeah. General Amsa Amin. And I'm also politically involved and trying to raise a new political party. Anyhow, I'll come to this point. This has been a very interesting subject. Identifying new opportunities and new modalities. I think we have lost many opportunities and many modalities. So those lost ones also should be reviewed. And of course, new ones must be found out. Here I'd repeat what Dr. Raman Saban had mentioned. Following on that, I'd say there can be an opportunity if we create a systematic organizational approach to civilizational and interfaith reconciliation system, particularly for the subcontinent, India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. We know where the root of the problem of cooperation,
Sir, did you
integration
say
lies.
interfaith?
Interfaith dialogue
Achha.
and civilizational truth-seeking. Because we know these days that the civilizational narratives are being changed. And that is upsetting a lot of people. That is an important point. And the second point is, can we think of mass tourism and convert it into goodwill missions in this region? Maybe there would be need for public support, not just depending on the commercial or industrial approach.
Thank you, sir.
The last point,
Yes.
we have heard about the exchanges of academia or diplomats, track one. I would emphasize on publicly supported mass students exchange programs in a systematic way. I think they are the future ambassadors of regional cooperation and integration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think so. The last point will resonate with Shekhar, who has been mentioning about the education sector and also what Dr. Ishrat was mentioning about the youth. Thank you, sir, for that. Who is next? Now I see so many on that. Zaid bhai. Mustafiz, I will recognize CPD people at the end.
Thank you, Priya.
Others will get it.
I just want to ask the Governor two questions.
Yeah.
One is on the debt restructuring, particularly with China. And I think some with India too. Where do you stand on that? Or did it play a major role in terms of improving the macro stability? The second question is the independence of the central bank. Was it there? If it was there, how did you manage to get it? If it wasn't there, how did you manage to raise interest rate by such magnitudes and then let the exchange rate float? I find it very hard to think how the fiscal authorities tolerated those measures. You mentioned fiscal dominance, so the basic question is, how did you get rid of it? Thank you.
Thank you, Zaid bhai. Those are very two pertinent questions. One is the debt reconciliation or debt restructuring with China. And the other one is the central bank independence and your ability to pursue that particular type of monetary policy and fiscal policies along with that. Very good. Thank you very much. Mustafiz? No, I'm not exhausted.
Thank you, Chair. My first question was, in fact, along the... Yeah?
That was Dr. Jahid Hussain, one former chief economist, World Bank, currently teacher and a very eminent columnist now.
Yeah, Chair.
Professor Mustafizur Rahman, the former executive director of CPD and distinguished fellow at this moment.
Thank you, Chair. My question was in line with Zahid Bhai's, but a bit of an elaboration, which is that China accounts for 18% of the total external loan and India 5%, but the highest percentage is for sovereign loans. So what would you do with that part? Because that's the major part of the external loan. So that's one. The second is that how much, what is the role of the remittance and tourism now? Because you have said that from $25 million, the reserves have gone up to $2 billion. So is it because the remittances and the tourism have come back Thank you.
Colleagues, I want to remind you, there are other countries in the region other than Sri Lanka, Colombo and Sri Lanka. So we may have other interests as well in many ways in the new forms of sub-regional cooperation and many other things which are happening in connectivity and in the energy cooperation and many others in that way. Please, any other issue? The quota for Sri Lankan reforms is exhausted. So you'll have to now come up with a new question. And the governor has already his table full on that. Any more? Yes, sir.
So first of all, I was wondering that you just say that...
Brother, I know you, but introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Engineer M.A. Jabbar. I'm Vice President of Federation of Pakistan Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And for the last quarter of a century, I'm just hearing, watching, and seeing the failures, you see repeatedly failures of all that way forwards. So having said so, introduce myself, you say identifying new opportunities. I think the problem is that whether the opportunities up till now identified have been fairly, you see, put to the test of success. I mean, say then only you can talk about identifying new opportunities. I mean, my main question is that even in the theme, I get confused now. Having said so, one thing more I want to ask you is that I'm saying in this note, your note is very good, like Dr. Mustafi's note was so good. You just say that due to geopolitical trends, you talk about impasse. Then you further go ahead, move forward. This necessitates overhauling conventional strategies by embracing new modalities and leveraging emerging opportunities. Now this is divided into two questions. Number one is that I never thought up till now we are being told about conventional strategies, conventional approaches. You know, the dynamics in the world is moving toward digitalization. One can say that the means of using instruments and their nature has changed. But we cannot say these were the conventional approaches. What is conventional approach? Our objective was development economics. I mean, say regionally, we become competitive, we take advantages.
The conventional approach in this case essentially meant the institutional structure of SAARC in that way, and the emphasis on trade only, and trade in manufactures. That was the idea. But please interpret it as you deem fit.
Okay, thank you very much for being so nice and kind, because you are like a teacher for me. So I think I respect you, and now I respect you more, because you are quite generous and liberal. So I think I would also have an exception on these. I would say I will have exception on these words, because I never thought these were conventional. Still they retain their values. The only difference is that identifying new opportunities is my objection. I must say opportunities have been identified. They are fairly, I must say, before us, as per the experiences. When we were, since morning we were in ASEAN.
Let me give you a blank, very direct question. You represent the private sector of Pakistan in many ways, and you have been a veteran in our SAES process. So, do you think that the opportunities for the current structure, what we have at this moment, has exhausted or not? Or if not, what are the binding constraints for taking private sector forward? I alert Joshimbai to respond to that as well later. But if you have any issue from the private sector perspective, that would be nice. If very briefly, because I see my colleagues are getting ready for the dinner.
I'll just finish in 60 seconds, okay?
Yes.
My teacher, it's okay. Okay. So now I would like to say that opportunities, you can only on the macro, indications basis are the opportunities. Maybe we had at that time opportunity to share $100 billion trade. Maybe today we have opportunity to share an enhanced value because of the tripling of the, global trade and multiplying of the trade in different, RTAs and in different blocks. Yeah. So here I put the demarcation of the difference in taking the opportunities. So we had opportunities, we could not exploit. So let us remain with those opportunities at least to exploit, instead of identifying new opportunities which must have a separate and a specific definition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So been said that we have to exploit also the existing opportunities and what we have missed out in many ways. Any more questions? Any comments more? Thank you very much. I'm so grateful to you. Please give a big round of applause for those who didn't ask questions. Because they have done a great service in that way. Governor, I will bring you to the end, but before that, I would like to bring in my other colleagues over here. So one of the issues which is coming back, Shekhar, let me start with you. The geopolitics, which will be discussed tomorrow morning, definitely, in many ways. But the feeling is that the India has lost interest in South Asia, and it's more a global player. And to that extent, even with G20, you have mentioned yourself the G20. And how does it really put in its weight into the South Asia and after the elections in Delhi? Do you see that, or you have also totally moved to the real politics and creating, if SARC didn't work, how a South Asia G will work, G8 will work?
Yeah, so I should be clear. The realpolitik applied to the aspirational phase of regional cooperation and our ambitions about that, which were embodied in SARC. So I have a sense that not only might SARC have lost its utility, but could be acting as an impediment to the realpolitik nature of the co-benefits that might ensue from appropriate regional and bilateral, trilateral, quadrilateral initiatives. So I want to be clear about that. On the question of India, there are two very eminent heads of institutions here, Nagesh and also Sachin, who are probably much better placed than I am. Sachin in particular, since he works very closely with the government and the Ministry of External Affairs. But I do think that while there is an aspiration on India's side led by its Prime Minister to play on the global stage, it also wants to be the voice of the global South. And how can you be the voice of the global South if you can't be the voice of your neighbors, at least, who are very much part of the global South, with a quarter of the world's population in this region? So I just don't see the logic of not reaching out to India's neighbors, but reaching out to faraway capitals. I believe that reaching out and showing leadership in the region will only consolidate India's aspirations to being a voice of the global South and hopefully of emerging market economies and middle income economies, etc. A role that China did not play very well, except through, of course, the BRI, where it had its own intentions and purposes. So I would say that I think one can very easily differentiate that. I think a proposal like the SARC proposal in 1985, and Farouk is here, that actually creates the momentum for a heads of state meeting, minus all the constraints that a SARC-like process imposes on them. Much as in the G20, it was possible to come to a resolution of what seemed to be completely unresolvable issues with the Ukraine-Russia war. So I would say that yes, it is very much possible. And I would like to just add one more thing. If you just imagine a country, single country of 2 billion people, which only traded within the parts of that country 8% of its overall trade, and 92% was with the outside world. And any family member, friend, or business person wanting to go to another part of the country had to wait for a visa for 8, 10 days, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. It's an unviable proposition. And we are losing out on the kinds of numbers that Mandakini talked about every year in terms of GDP flows, 1, 2%, that are simply just being wasted year after year, when we desperately need that kind of growth and therefore hopefully social protection, ways of trying to improve equality within our societies. So I think it's a no-brainer if we can get to the kind of agreement at the heads of state level to move ahead. So I would urge very much that we do that.
Thank you, Shekhar, for elaborating your G8 South Asia concept. I think that essentially you meet without the trappings of the South SARC, so that you are more flexible in terms of doing things and doing business and to take this forward. But particularly when you know that the politics is the name of the game. And I think everybody would agree in the morning and thereafter that the issue of travel logistics, trade logistics are becoming a critical issue, although some measures are being taken, but it is not being felt across the board. Excellency, you still, after listening to Shekhar, equally optimist as you had been? And I would like to again take back to you, when Nepal had been a part of this variable geometry very much in terms of the BBIN and BIN and others in that way. And we are now building a big port, deep sea port in Matarbari in anticipation. Nepal is going to use it, Bhutan is going to use it, Northeast India is going to use it. Is really Nepal predisposed to those kind of things happening downstream, and also what is happening around it in many ways? Anything you want to add?
I am an optimist. So I do believe in the power of...
Sir, is that a faith or it is empirics?
Let me say this. Given the South Asian civilizational commonality that we have and the common aspirations we have, seeking to exclude one or two countries entirely out of the process could be one thing from someone's part. But then, even if SARC was not there, it would have been necessary to create one now to act, to make ourselves, to enable ourselves to work together, to act as one country actually, one economy vis-a-vis the rest of the world. And I think there lies the essence of civil society. Doing away with SARC entirely is suicidal for South Asia. So are you prepared to believe that civil society in South Asia is dead?
Just give me a time of half a minute. Huh? How many of you really believe that it will be suicidal to dissolve SARC at this moment?
Big hand.
So I think the majority is still talking about keeping SARC alive and make it kick. Okay, please carry on. But that does not mean that G8 is not there on the table. These are
they are
simultaneously can be there in many
together,
ways.
many tracks. So if we say, mean to say that SARC is dead, it cannot revive, then it would be tantamount to believing that civil society in South Asia is dead. Are you prepared to believe that? Because civil society is the one that has to impress on their government.
You want to take out my living?
I want to work with you in this cause. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Give a big hand. Thank you very much. Governor, you got the issues already. So how do you really manage? Are you really independent enough?
Yes, I think...
the politicians allow you to operate independently?
I'll answer the question. So this, I think first question, China debt, I think I have to answer that first. On the overall debt restructuring, we have about half of external and domestic. Domestic part we have completed. External part, majority as I said earlier, commercial debt, over 50% out of, I think, 40 billion US dollars. And then out of commercial, then we have rest bilateral from India, China, Japan. China has some major share, almost 50% there. And then balance other Paris Club and others. So we are basically, we have, I don't see a problem with restructuring. And also it's not correct, I think any one country that is a problem for Sri Lanka. It's, in my view, it's mainly the commercial debt, unconditional and non-accountable debt has created, as I said earlier. So we are making good progress. And the central bank independence, I think important point that I couldn't touch earlier is that, in fact, even under the previous act, we had central bank sufficient independence in the central bank in legislation. The why I would say that even with these fiscal imbalances, fiscal dominance, if you look at 2009 to 2020, this period, we were able to maintain inflation around 5%, that is a target range, with some reforms in the monetary policy framework, with applying proper monetary policy framework, inflation targeting regime informally, and also exercising independence available to the central bank, that we were able to maintain that. But the issue was that although it's up to the monetary board or the governor of the board to exercise that independence, but there is a risk always. In the law, there are certain two weaknesses. One is Minister of Finance representation. Secretary Minister of Finance is ex-officio member out of the 5 members. Ex-officio member is Secretary Minister of Finance. Depending on the personality of the secretary, who is kind of more understanding of overall macro policies, would not influence the central bank, basically would not impose fiscal dominance in the monetary policy making. Then there are periods that we were able to maintain that 5% inflation even with that weakness, because that depends on the personality who sit on the monetary board as a Secretary Minister of Finance. And secondly, in the Central Banking Act earlier, there was a provision, there's a provision to monetize fiscal deficits if there are, if government thinks they need to, central bank can finance the budget deficit directly through primary auctions. That was the second weakness that we had. Third one is the appointment of the governor and the board members directly by the president on the recommendation of the Minister of Finance without any checks and balances. So those are 3 weaknesses. Because we saw that even earlier, before the crisis, we drafted a new bill under the previous IMF program, 16-1, and bill was submitted to even to the parliament, and then government changed. Then that government argument was like, okay, so far government, central bank has been doing it okay, maintain inflation, why do you need to bring additional provisions that they can use flexibility? But that was heavily misused during the COVID and post-COVID with the, as I said, monetary, what they call modern monetary theory. Then people all understood. That time there was no support for the new central bank bill even in the parliament. But after crisis, when new bill was brought back with experience of the crisis, and that basically addressed all these 3 key areas. One is there's no government representatives in the central bank board now, and also inflation targeting regime was brought in as a formal monetary policy framework, and monetary financing, there's no possibility of monetary financing now, and also appointment to the boards of the governing and monetary policy board. Also, there's an additional safeguard brought in. Minister of Finance can recommend, President can appoint, but it has to be approved by the Constitutional Council, which is an independent, multi-party kind of the bipartisan consensus, and there are certain qualifications, suitability also there. So that's other. I think everyone appreciate those 3 provisions are important for new central banking act. That was passed recently. Now we are operating under new central banking act, which has sufficient safeguards of earlier weaknesses of these 3 areas. Now it has also been addressed. That now I can say, but it's all about, even when I came in, I basically operated under the early act. There's no kind of the prohibition, or if you want to exercise as a governor, obviously there was a sufficient provision, but you need to exercise the independence. It depends on the independence of the person, and who would want to exercise independence is important.
Would you kindly repeat the last sentence? You have just said the last sentence.
It is about
independence of the
people who uses the
independence,
exercise the independence of the central bank.
Exactly.
So just to safeguard that, that's why appointment process is important. When people are appointed to the central bank, you need to have proper integrity, accountability, suitability, professionalism. Once you are appointed, they have fixed term, and they should not be, they cannot be removed from the boards irrespective of the administration. And obviously we all expect from the members that they should exercise that independence in a proper, prudent manner. And with other important, independence is not sufficient, independence with accountability. So now we have much more accountability. So earlier, now we are accountable to the parliament, accountable to the people, accountable to the markets. We have to make much more transparent processes in terms of strong accountability with the independence.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted that last message to be taken very strongly on that. I think you have got that. Thank you. Because at the end of the day, its independence is exercised by human beings. And if the human being is not ready to do that individual, then it's no good giving charters in many ways. Thank you. Zaidwa, got your answer? Thank you. You got a subject for your new column, I'm pretty sure. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to invite Mr. Joshimuddin. He is the president of the SAARC Chamber of Commerce. He had been the president of the Federation of Chamber of Commerce of Bangladesh Industries. He is, as I mentioned, his empire ranges from the media to insurance to bank to plastic industries to engineering industries to garments industries, whatnot. Am I missing something? So it's a pleasure to have him here and welcome him on behalf of CPD and all the SAARC community who are present here. Joshim bhai, the floor is yours. Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Devapriya Bhattacharya, the chairman of the today's the wonderful plenary session, and the distinguished panelist, and I like to congratulate Mr. Nandalal, the governor, the Sri Lankan Central Bank, and the honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished experts and the academians and civil society, my fellow business leaders, friends and media, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. It is an honor to privilege for me to join the 14th South Asia Economic Summit, the panel discussion identifying the new opportunities and new modalities for fostering regional cooperation and Southeast Asia. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to organizers, RISE India and SWATI Nepal, SDPI Pakistan and IPS Sri Lanka and CPD for putting together the remarkable event. The theme of this 14th summit referring the South Asian regional cooperation and new context, national and global dimensions, and the confers the shift within this beyond the borders, highlights the urgency in adapting these changes. In this context, ability and identify the new opportunities or new modalities and fostering regional cooperation is vital for the prosperity and the development of our nations and the region as a whole. While the SAARC region holds the tremendous potential, has been strained the potential political tensions, historical patterns and the ongoing disputes, individuals like South Asia, Free Trade SAPTA and the SAPAs have struggled effective. The SAARC process itself remains the strength. Interregional trade continue to below 7%. Actually, when I reach here, so I discussed with our Mr. Devapriya Bhattacharya about I am become the president of SAARC Chamber. So what is how is going on? So when I took over the SAARC Chamber, that time I was the president of Federation Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So my challenge is to how to start the activities of the SAARC chamber, because we all knows the bottleneck of this problem. What is the bottleneck? So I visited India to friend of FICCI, because FICCI is the partner of our FBCCI counterpart in India. So because we need to have because we are a businessman in the private sector, and because we know the European Union, how they are doing business in their regional business, and the NAFTA is doing more than 46%. Even the ASEAN is doing more than 14%, 24%. And we are doing only less than 7%, and I think the business Bangladesh and India is most of them. So regional business is not there actually. But there is a huge potential to use each other, because every country have their own potentiality, resource to use each other. We are desperately looking cheapest the power, the electricity. We are buying the expensive LNG and producing the energy. Whereas the Nepal, they have a 85,000 megawatt capability to produce the electricity, and 30,000 is Bhutan. But we are not getting that because of the why. Bangladesh can easily buy, as a private sector businessman, I can source the cheapest raw materials, because the electricity is raw materials for me. So, where is the problem? I think from our side, I every day got a call from different people. I need a visa from Indian visa. I need that visa because of even now even Indian business visa need 3 months, 2 months process. When you apply it, then you submit your passport after 2 months. So this is the actually problem we are facing. Other than as a businessman, we want to do business. Bangladesh, we are exporting around $52 billion of the product to export, our portfolio. But we are exporting to India only $2 billion. But India, they are importing from China is $150 billion of the product. We can easily sell there. But the problem is, even they don't understand, they don't know even the Bangladesh, we have what kind of product we are producing. So this is our side. Problem is the private sector, we cannot go and we cannot market our product properly, because from Bangladesh side, our government, the EPB is doing for our export promotion bureau, they are promoting. But I think now is the time to come to our private sector to go our product, our Bangladesh, what kind of the product we are producing, we should display there in India. We should go now to time to promote ourselves to India or Pakistan, because Pakistan also have a lot of potential product to buy. You can buy and you can use as a raw material. So they have a wonderful denim fabric. We are buying from India or we are buying from China. Easily we can buy from Pakistan, the better price. So from my side, as a president of SAARC chamber, we'll start very soon, because I had all 8 countries, we have a meeting, and all the vice president, we have a WhatsApp group. We do every day, we are discussing how to start. So we have 8th of December, we have a meeting in Kathmandu, and I already discussed with our SAARC secretariat to, as a partner, we can have first the outside the meeting to SAARC chamber in Kathmandu with them, the partnering with the SAARC secretariat. So not only SAARC, there is a BIMSTEC, there is a BBN. When we have this kind of the platform, we need to use them. So who will be policy maker? The government is a policy maker. As a businessman, what I can do? If we can have now in Bangladesh, we are going to footing industry in the, in Borishal, there is there is a bola. Why? There is a gas there. So the businessman, we are going there, footing industry, gas-based industry, maybe ceramic industry, maybe there. So actually what we need infrastructure. We need infrastructure, we need a policy, we need this kind of things. So promote the business and how to launch the business. And I think if we go for the policy or the better, India, Bangladesh and the Pakistan, India and Pakistan, officially actually they are not doing business. There is no business actually officially. There is a ban, the business. So how we can promote the SAARC? But there is a huge potential. India and Pakistan, they have each other. They can sell their product each other. And the businessman, I talked to one of Pakistani gentlemen and the one Indian gentleman. They are doing business together. They are seriously affecting their business because of they cannot do officially trade. So I think now the global situation is a clustering. Global situation is each other. The regional business is every country is doing and increasing business. America now is there trying to get less business with China, and they are trying to more business is their region. In the America and Mexico, every day they are increasing their business, regional business. So I think from my side, there is a huge potential for every country, especially in Southeast Asia, the SAARC country, huge population there, huge market is there. And why we go for in our products sell to the America, there's a $4,000 is the container fare. Why not India? So I think the politician, they should understand what is the bottleneck, and the people, all people, the SAARC region, all people they are very friendly atmosphere, and they wants to go each country. Bangladesh, we are going to Sri Lanka for the tourism. We are going to India every day. Thousands of people, they are going to India and Pakistan or whatever. But we want to do business also. We want to resolve this problem. So thank you very much to CFD. They have arranged the beautiful, wonderful this session. And also, I am hoping it will be resolved and our business will be the more and more, and our SAARC will be the remain, and we are hopeful to SAARC will, because everyone is their hands, everyone supporting the SAARC should be remain, and so thank you very much. Thank you.
Colleagues, you know that there will be a cultural function and also a dinner, and I can see the guests are arriving. I'm so happy to see them. I'm going to close, but thank you, Joshinbhai, for that very inspiring and also very speech which gives us some guidance as well. And this possibly fits in with Ambassador Bhattarai's position that the civil society and the business sector should come forward and do the needful in these cases on that. Shekhar and I go back a long way, and we are sparring partners in many ways, but you have only 1 minute to make your final point, Shekhar.
So I just wanted to clarify that I think it's a false dichotomy to say that SARC is equal to civil society.
I never said that.
No, but I think that's the implication that was kind of put. If there's no SARC, there's going to be no civil society engagement. Farouk is here as the original concept paper writer of SARC. With all due respect to our SARC representative who's here, I do not believe that gatherings like this and discussions and debates like this and ideas that come from this will in any way be hampered. And I'm not asking for, ending SARC tomorrow. It's a process, but it's something that needs to be done. And if indeed we are able to go to a heads of state meeting, we could easily have 2 tracks like the G20 has, a connectivity track, which is I think the crucial one. We can't have the second track called the Sherpa track because Nepal will have some thoughts about that. So we might just call it a people-to-people track, because that is where a lot of the issues that could actually motivate greater cooperation will happen. So I don't think we should equate SARC with civil society
I think
engagement.
the dinner discussion has started already, as you can feel. Shekhar, thank you very much. Ambassador, half a minute, please.
I did not equate civil society to SARC as we have. What I meant to say is that as long as civil society is active and knows how to talk reason, I think it is strong enough to impress on the governments in respective countries to make SARC come back and work for the cause of South Asia. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will not interpret any of the comments of that. That will create a third situation. Let me conclude and please give a big hand to this fantastic panel. I think so. They kept him awake. They keep you all awake in many ways, and I'm sure you will go out wiser from this room. My grandmother told me never make more than 3 comments. The people will never believe the 4th one, even if they are participants of the SAES 14. So what are my 3 points over here? My first point is that don't write off SARC. SARC is still there, and there are many modalities within the SARC still there, within their notwithstanding various governance-related issues, and we should be exhausting those inner potentials before we move into, as we move into other territories over there. So let us concentrate, create political momentum in favor of SARC. Agreed? Okay, thank you. The second point also is that, but we should not really remain hostage to these structural issues which we already have on the table. We should explore new opportunities, new creative BBIN and the other plurilateral and multilateral mechanisms are very much there. But also we should look for political level new opportunities. And particularly since politics is one of the major impediments, we will have to create that political momentum at the regional level. So we need to think through how we can create similar regional platform for the summits, which is not hostage to the SARC structural impediments as it goes in many ways. Is that correct? Huh? And the third point is that whilst we do look for this kind of institutional mechanism in terms of promoting our regional prosperity in many ways, there are other also development experiences happening at this very moment in different parts of this country, in the region. And Sri Lanka's experience is a case in point from which we need to learn in order to avoid similar challenges or similar circumstances and to improve the well-being of our own citizens. And to that end, the think tanks which have gathered over here as a special role to play to do the analytics, to do the empirical, analysis, and also evidence-based policy making, and also bring along with that the private sector and the media and the young community, and all together to create that constituency pressure as we wanted to go forward over there. So the efforts to learn from each other still continues, and it goes, and the opportunities is much beyond the structures and politics as we see over here. And the rest, as they say, is the dinner, not the history. So, colleagues, thank yourself once again. And it had been a pleasure sitting here in this company and in front of you. Have a good evening.